Hey guys, it's Dr. Faith, and I am here to talk to you about the reality of love. In the past several weeks, we've just been talking about different expectations and things that people go into marriage into that are not necessarily true, or they're not necessarily biblical. So today we're talking about a hot topic, and I want to deal with some myths that singles as well as newlyweds go into in regards to sex. So today's topic is myths about sex in marriage. I'm just going to share two of them. I have a blog on my website, AskDrFaith.com, that goes into two others and just really breaking down myths about sex and marriage. And so we know that God created marriage for several reasons, and it's something that he loves within the context of marriage. One, because it brings unity between the husband and the wife. It brings oneness. There's chemicals and endorphins that are released in the midst of intimacy that allow you guys to be attached and to come together. And so God created it for unity and for oneness. When you fight, go ahead and be intimate with your spouse. That's going to help bring you guys back together. Don't let it be a defense mechanism to not talking through things, but when it's something that's small and you can just get over, make sure that you spend time in unity that way. So sex is for unity. Sex is for oneness. It's also for procreation or for multiplication. Be fruitful and multiply, as the Bible says. So God created sex in marriage to help bring children that will fear God, and that will be arrows for the nations. And lastly, it's also a model of just his love, the bridegroom and his bride, and the unity and the coming together. And so even marriage in general is a representation of God's love, Jesus's pursuit of his bride, and just the union of a bride and a bridegroom coming together. And so when you are in intimacy with your husband or with your wife, you're representing that model again, that oneness of what that looks like. And so sex is really good within marriage, but I think that when people go into it with certain expectations, it can cause a lot of frustration, it can cause a lot of pressure, and it can cause a lot of discontentment in marriage. So one of the myths that I hear a lot of singles or newlyweds, not even newlyweds, mostly singles, saying, when I get married, we are going to have sex all the time, and just all day, every day, everywhere. And the truth is, yeah, initially when you get married, especially if you have been pure with your husband or your wife when you're courting, you didn't have sex. Sex is exciting. When you guys get married, it's something that you want to do all the time. You want to be around each other anyway, so why not be, really around each other? So it's something that definitely you experience the intimacy and the passion early on. But the truth is, as you settle into marriage and later on as you have kids, and routines change and schedules change, you may not have it every day all the time. And that's the truth. And so you don't want to go into it with that expectation and then you're disappointed. But what you want to do is really have a clear understanding of the expectations that you and your spouse have. Research says that a healthy marriage has their sex at least 3 to 4 times a week. So some couples go for more than that, and some couples a little bit less, but that's where you want to shoot. So if you're at 3 or 4 or 5 or 6, wonderful, keep going, that's great. If it's less than that for the people that are married, you want to work on that. Sex, you have to be intentional. Sometimes you may have to carve out time. You may want to talk about what works physically, what's working in terms of your schedules, when someone is tired, when someone is not. Those are things that you want to communicate. So there are going to be seasons where you have sex all the time, and there are going to be seasons when you have to work at it and put the time together to have sex. So it's good and it's going to be great, but don't go into these expectations that it has to happen all the time, especially for men and women as well. I mean, sometimes women are more sexually driven than men, and so it's just important to know that. The second myth is that sex gets boring the longer you stay married, and usually those are people that got divorced or have never been married that say that. But the truth is, when a marriage is good, the communication is good, and the covenant is strong, and there's friendship and there's love, couples report a deep sexual intimacy, and that it gets stronger and stronger as they get married. And there's freedom and there's safety in the covenant, in the covenantal bed, that allows people to be open and allow people to be free, which breaks up the monotony and the boredness. So sex only gets boring in marriage if that's the main thing that you went into it for, or if you're not deepening your relationship with your spouse in other areas, or if there are other areas or issues, stressors, then of course it's not only going to get boring, but it's probably going to be non-existent. And so most couples say the longer they've been married, couples I've talked to, they've been married 10 years, 20 years, keep the spice going, do things that are different, as long as it's respectful, as long as it doesn't disrespect the other person and it doesn't pull you away from God. Don't bring in things that are going to bring defilement to each other, but keep it spicy and keep it new and try different things with your spouse, and it doesn't get boring. From what I've heard, I've only been married 2 years, and it's wonderful. But for those that have been married longer, they've also said the same thing. They have wonderful marriages and it doesn't get boring. So those are just some of the myths. So for the singles and the newlyweds, you have a great thing to look forward to. Have realistic expectations about them, and be open with your future spouse when you get married, or when you're very close to your wedding. Don't start talking about sex too early in courtship. You don't want to go down the wrong road. But it's a wonderful thing. So for the other myths, visit my website, AskDrFaith.com. If you guys have questions, you can even email me at info@AskDrFaith.com. All right. Talk to you guys soon. Bye-bye.